Hello, everybody, and welcome. This is Damage Reports, a video podcast about the modern day Star Trek. So, with me right now is Mike Armendariz.
And with me right now is James Cope. Come on,
yeah.
dude. The first time you've done this?
Maybe. I don't know.
All right.
So, do you? How about you do the opening? If you maybe have more experience at this than I do.
Oh, we're keeping this. We're keeping this
Okay,
completely.
good, excellent.
All right.
Mike and I are both older Star Trek geeks. Recently, CBS launched a trailer for Star Trek Lower Decks that both me and Mike watched and had polar opposite opinion on the trailer. I saw the trailer and I thought, oh my God, this looks like a pile of shit. And Mike, you saw the trailer and your feelings were?
I'm going to watch the show and judge from the finished product.
How dare you? How dare
Right.
you? That disgusts me. Much of Star Trek review shows are either from a very negative place or from a very positive place. Like there seems to be...
Which is us to a T.
Yeah, that seems to be the two camps that Star Trek has fallen into now. Either you think everything that comes out of Star Trek is horrible and the people should be removed, or you think Star Trek is finally good. And I think both of us, one, you should know, viewer, that both of us have a lot of experience on this topic, and we both have different points of view of how we feel it's been going.
Based on what you just said, I think it would be funny if for the rest of the episode, or however many we do, that we put our faces halfway down the center, so we're the Frank Gorshin character from the original series, so that your side hates it and my side likes it.
Yeah, we could do that.
No, I agree. I have a really complicated history with Star Trek. I, for a long time, and I think I could still say, based on quantity, that I like Star Trek more than I like Star Wars. Based on just the amount of Star Trek there is. Star Trek means a lot more to a lot more people because of how much there's been. You can also say that there's been a lot worse Star Trek than there's been a lot good, or the same amount of good of Star Wars. I like them all. There's some I like, there's some I dislike. But yeah, like I said, it's complicated for me because ever since I was a child, I think my first exposure to Star Trek was Star Trek 2 and 1. Those are like really like right there in my head. And I think through liking those and being interested in those through my older sister, I would watch episodes of the original series and not really be into that until like my teens, but was more about the movies. I loved the movies forward and backward, got into Next Generation around the time of Best of Both Worlds.
Oh my God.
So, I mean, this has been my entire life, basically. So I think that's why I give it a little bit more leeway. But yeah, Star Trek is a fundamental thing about me as a person and sort of my philosophical outlook. So I'm interested to go through this with you because we both like it, but I'm not going to say that we like it for different reasons, but I think we like it for different aspects.
This is funny because I have almost an identical relationship that you had with it. I was first exposed to Star Trek with Star Trek 2. It's still one of my favorite science fiction films ever, and it is a comfort film for me. I will watch the movie anytime I'm feeling sad, and I instantly feel better. Then Star Trek 3 was a little confusing for me. 4, I fell in love with them because I was the right age. I was like 8 or 9 when that one came out on VHS, and it was just great. And I was first introduced to Star Trek Next Generation with a Honey Nut Cheerios promotion where they were giving out stickers of the ship if you bought Honey Nut Cheerios. And I got it, and then I watched an episode from like season 1. And I was like, I don't like this. So it was just dead to me, go away. And one of the many times I've been wrong. So if you ever don't like my opinion, you can say, well, that fathead's been wrong like many times. Then
please, everyone, caption and print that out so that anytime he says something in the future, you could show that to him.
Yeah. Then I was 12 when Best of Both Worlds Part 1 aired. I didn't watch it.
Wow.
But a friend of mine did. And he's like, you watching Next Generation? It's like, nah, screw that. No Kirk, no Spock, no thank you. And he said, the captain became a cyborg zombie, and the second in command has to take control of the ship and now kill him. And that, like, 12-year-old James was terrified. Like, terrified. It was the highest stakes, like higher than the world ending. Like a whale probe can kill the world. That's okay. But the idea that, like, in my head, Spock would have to kill Captain Kirk to save everybody else was like, and so I had to watch it. And then, so they all summer they did reshowings of season 3, and I watched a couple. But I really started watching Next Generation with season 4. And for those who are fans, season 4 is an excellent season to start Next Generation on.
It's funny in you saying that. I watched a lot of the first season as it aired, and I don't think I liked it for the same reason I don't really rewatch those episodes now. It just feels so dated. It feels older than the original series based on how it's made and like the philosophies and the acting even.
Mm-hmm.
But I remember the episode where Tasha Yar gets killed and feeling like that was too dark for me. And I think I checked out about that time. And then I didn't really like Dr. Pulaski.
Yeah.
So I didn't really watch any of the second season. And like you, it wasn't until hearing what happened on the third season that it was like, I'm going to start watching reruns of this.
Yeah.
And just fell in love and kept going with it.
The only series I really didn't like, and I still don't like, we'll get to the later stuff here, but always had problems with Voyager, so I'm one of those.
Up until the most recent stuff, my least favorite Star Trek was Enterprise. I just couldn't get into it. I thought that what they were deconstructing didn't need to be deconstructed.
Yeah.
And I still have a bit of respect for it. You and I have talked about this in the build-up to Lower Decks, where for the most part, from Star Trek The Next Generation on until the end of Enterprise, was all under the purview of Rick Berman. So it was this unified voice of what he interpreted Star Trek to be.
Yeah.
And I just didn't like that he decided what we need to do is show the beginnings of this. I think they were running out of steam. So I think that's where I kind of fell out of love with everything, was with Enterprise. So as a benchmark for going forward, for those of you who are unfamiliar with either James or myself, I would say that my least favorite was Enterprise. I didn't really love Voyager, but I really didn't like Enterprise.
Time we got to Next Generation and every show beyond that, Gene Roddenberry very much wanted the crew of the Enterprise and kind of the crew of any ship should not have conflict. They should not fight. There's a wonderful documentary called Chaos on the Bridge about the first couple years of Star Trek The Next Generation. And the writers just being like, how are we supposed to write a dramatic show where no one's allowed to fight with each other?
The original cartoon is where I have no idea.
And I watched a couple episodes of this, so I'm in the same boat as you.
Okay, good. Good, we both suck.
Yeah, good, great.
Neither of us know what we're talking about.
Especially since I believe reading about Lower Decks before this, they very much pulled from some of the stuff from the animated show.
Yeah, the first and foremost, everyone was going so crazy about the Cation doctor, which would never, I don't think, be able to be done live action, having a cat person as a doctor, which is weird to me. Reading up on that just to get, before we did this, found out that race is all female presenting. So how does that work where there aren't any male Cations? Because I could have sworn that there's one in the trial scene at the end of Star Trek 4 when the crew is on trial. There's a cat dude there, so I'm wondering if that's supposed to be a male one or not.
And maybe,
So,
but
who knows?
it might also have been that was the costume available on the Paramount lot. So put somebody in it because I need some goddamn aliens in this scene.
Deep Space Nine, rewatching it right now, I'm at the point where it's concurrent with Star Trek First Contact, the
cool.
8th movie of the movie series, where Deep Space Nine started wearing the gray uniforms that the TNG characters wore in First Contact. And reading the behind the scenes of that first episode, Sisko's doesn't really fit him. It's big around the collar, and he has to wear his insignia pin a lot higher on his chest in the gray area because Paramount was so cheap that they gave him Jonathan Frakes' costume from First Contact, and it didn't fit him because Frakes is such a bulky guy. So he didn't have a costume that fit until about 4 or 5 episodes down the line. And when you read stuff like that, where like they were so cheap as to not make a costume, you wonder how this series has lasted for 55 years. 6th, today is Lucille Ball's birthday.
Oh, nice.
And a lot has been made today about how Star Trek wouldn't have even existed if she hadn't said, no, don't cancel, or let's go ahead with this second pilot that Star Trek had, the one where they added Shatner.
Mhm.
She's the one who said, no, let's make that. And it became a series. And if Lucille Ball hadn't put her foot down in that meeting to spite other people and to spite Desi, if she hadn't done that out of spite, Star Trek wouldn't have existed. And it's crazy that that's one of those things now where it's like the episode City on the Edge of Forever. Can you imagine someone going back in time and making it so that Lucy doesn't go to that meeting? And then the world is so fundamentally changed because Star Trek never existed. We're in agreement on that. Star Trek The Next Generation is our 2 personal favorites in terms of Star Trek goes. So with this new iteration, I don't even know which series this is. So if we had the 5 original and then Discovery being 6, Picard being 7. So this is the 8th show. If we think The Next Generation is the best, where do we fall on Lower Decks? Let me get your opinion.
We're 1 episode in and a trailer. So even though some of us in this recording judge trailers for a whole series, and some people don't, it's 1 episode in. It's a really rough episode, and would I say it's the worst? No, I've like the series. I think I've been most smacked in the face, embarrassed for everybody involved was Picard. Like Picard is like, wow. Like if there's no Terminators, because one of them would have come back and stopped that shit. At home when Patrick Stewart did the announcement, and I got all fangirled out when we started to see trailers. I was like, oh my god, it's Lowell. It's Lowell. She's alive somehow. Like I was like, Data rebuilt her. Like before he did. I was like, I had conspiracy theories beyond conspiracy theories about it.
So what I don't like about Picard was that they kind of they did what I like, which is not to be beholden to old stuff like that, but almost to a fault. I don't think Picard would 20 years later be in touch with Geordi or Worf and like anything like that. So it made sense to me that the show wouldn't have those characters on there. And it made sense that he would be in touch with Riker and Troy because they were fundamentally closer than almost anyone else on the ship. But I don't want to see that in a TV show. In a TV show, I want to see LeVar Burton and Michael Dorn. I want to see Picard being like, if I need to get this job done, I'm going to call the people I most rely on, not this drunk assistant that I had 20 years ago who's even drunker now.
Yeah.
That I'm going to rely on more than I'm going to rely on like these people that I knew for 15 years that I know I can rely on. So that's what I disliked about that. When we get into the episode of this one, I'll tell you why I didn't like that in this one.
Well, for me, it's more of a common sense thing from my point of view, which is I'm Picard and I'm retired, and everybody hates me for some reason on Earth, even though I've saved Earth 3 times. Which at that point, I don't even think I'd make you assholes whine. I would just leave, like the head of Starfleet. That the fucking hubris scene is like, do you live on Earth? Because I saved it a couple of times. Like that means nothing in this world. But so he's having dreams about Data, and then this person shows up who's got like superpowers and is somehow related to Data. I think logically I would try to locate the people that knew Data best in case there was something I would be missing. Which means I hate Wesley Crusher. But I would have for the show, for concept wise, I would have, the first person he should have called was Geordi, and Geordi should have called Wesley, and been like, hey, we both pulled apart Data's brain. Data's head was blown off and left in a cave once, and we put it back together. Like with it, like if they're not going to get Manus, who I was happy that he was in there, and I was happy that Hugh was in there. You know, the Borg that had been saved. So those are other, if we're going to talk about the difference between is artificial intelligence as important as life. And if we're going to go down and we're deciding that this one concept will be the entire first season, which is another thing that drives me nuts about the new Star Trek, which is you take a concept and we analyze it, and everybody else has been able to do this in 22 to 50 minutes, and you need 24 hours to tell us this one concept. And that just is why your storytelling is horrible. So that's been my problem with, like, you know, what I've seen of Discovery, all of Picard, and we'll see about this show. But
I think you nailed it on the head, where you did an entire show, not you personally. They did an entire show about Picard, his relationship with Data, and Data's life. And they don't mention the daughter that he built in the show. They don't mention his evil twin brother, which, if you see someone that looks like Data doing something scheming, Picard's first instinct would be like, "You're lore, motherfucker." Yeah. But he was like, "Oh, you're just a brother we have never heard about?" I was like, come on. Like, it's so bizarre. It almost feels like the entirety of Picard could have been a Geordi TV show, because it doesn't feel like Picard would have gone through any of the hoops that he did for this. I mean, that was one of those things that the movies did, where the movies tried to focus it more on it being the Picard and Data show. Yeah. Where in my mind, I was still stuck in it being the Picard and Riker show. Yeah. Because I think that was a carryover from how much I liked the original movies, where it was about Kirk and Spock. And so I always looked at it as Picard and Riker, and then felt really weird how the movies were very much Picard and Data. But it seems like they just ran with that and said, let's make the show, let's make it about Data, and it was just bizarre. So what we've gotten with 21st century Star Trek, and I say 21st century, I'm going to be including Enterprise in that, even though that was technically 21st century. But when I say modern Trek, I'm generally talking about the 2009, 2013, and 2016 Bad Robot movies, and then the CBS All Access stuff. So Star Trek Discovery and Picard, and now Lower Decks. I think the problem that I have is that it is done by people who don't really have a unified story or a unified philosophy of what Star Trek can be, which is exemplified in the fact that this cartoon is a cartoon animated comedy, where they want it to be as many things to as many people as they can, which is why you have Discovery being the hard edge serialized show. They're coming out with a show that's just basically the original Star Trek that's going to be on the Enterprise with Captain Pike. And then you have this comedy. And I think that it suffers because of that there's no consistent tone. There's no message. This is the first time I would say at all since Enterprise and the end of Enterprise, where Star Trek feels more like a product than it does a philosophy or a show. I don't know the word I'm looking for on that.
A brand.
It feels like more like a commodity than a brand.
Yeah,
it feels like more like a brand that they want to protect.
Yeah, that was actually from one of the producers of the current Star Trek shows. She was at the Comic-Con thing. She was like, our goal over the next couple of years is to get the Star Trek brand on as much as possible. And that was the first time I had heard something I loved like referred to as like a brand, you know, and I was just like kind of defeated by it, because in science fiction, aliens are always going to kill us. They're always going to kill us. They're going to murder us. And I got a friend, John Morrison, who once said, thank God for Star Trek, where it's like the one science fiction thing where it's like, some of the aliens will help us, and if we all work together, we'll overcome these weird conflicts that is space and life. So that was Star Trek's mission. Like you can break down every great, the Star Trek formula is very easy, which is a diverse crew of people and aliens, all different walks of life, which should naturally be a hit in our day and age. And they encounter something science fiction-y, a science fiction topic, a science fiction trope, something that has been talked about, and then they work together to overcome it. That's it. You want to make a good anything Star Trek, that's the formula. So if you're watching this and you write for one of the shows, I'd start using that formula today, because that's it. And
those of you that are being paid big money to do this, listen to the two jerk-offs that are in their house and their empty office building. So strange and I think I don't want to like belabor the point, but like I said, Star Trek is so many different things and has become so many different things since the end of Enterprise in 2004 or 5 that it is strange. So that's one of the reasons why I was looking so much forward to Star Trek Lower Decks. Now, for those of you unfamiliar with Star Trek Lower Decks, we've talked about it a lot. Star Trek Lower Decks is the third series of this new CBS era. It's an animated series. It takes place in Next Generation times, and it's more of a comedy. It's about the crew members that aren't the important crew members on a ship. Whereas you have Kirk, Spock, and McCoy, and the bridge crew, and you followed them through all of their series and their movies. This is about the assistants and the grunts that work on the lower decks of the ship who make the starship run. It's a comedy. It's not focusing on the most important parts of the ship, and even the ship itself isn't an exploration ship that goes out and meets these new cultures. This ship is the ship that shows up after the Enterprise. So if the Enterprise goes somewhere and makes first contact with a culture and says, you are technologically advanced enough to become part of our Federation culture, do you want to join us? And they're like, yeah, sure. This ship then shows up and signs all the paperwork and says, this is how we do things. Here's some of our federal aid. Here's a paycheck protection program, and gets them going. So like we said, this is the first episode.
The title of this first episode is one of the best parts of the episode. It's called Second Contact, and which is a great Star Trek reference. Both a great Next Generation episode and number 8 film. And I guess because we're just going to start talking about it, so we'll go ahead and say spoilers. Should we say spoilers for anybody listening? Like, you are listening to this before you watch.
Let's put spoiler alert right before we did that. So
yeah.
when I start saying the Cerritos, you'll put in that little klaxon.
There you go.
So anyways, Star Trek Lower Decks episode Second Contact starts with it's a year. It takes place a year after the final movie with Picard and company, Star Trek Nemesis. It takes place a year after that, which you can tell by the star dates being 5/7 as opposed to 5. I'm a nerd, so we'll talk more about that off the air. So it takes place about a year after Star Trek Nemesis. This crew has shown up to help Second Contact with this new group of with this new planet, and you meet Ensign Boimler, who is this very nerdy by the book ensign on the USS Cerritos, which I did like. I liked that it's a California class starship, and it's called the Cerritos, and that all the shuttlecraft are named after something from California. There was the redwood, there was the Joshua tree. I liked that. It's a neat little theming thing that they have going on with it. So they show up to this planet, and Boimler is told by the captain, Freeman, keep an eye on this other ensign you work with. If she's out of line, you need to let me know because we want to get her out of Starfleet. So they initiate Second Contact with this alien culture. They go down, and she runs off in a Jeep to take these supplies to this group of aliens that are off in the periphery. And he catches her and believes that she's selling weapons to this culture. She's like, no, dude, I'm selling... And it's funny, I think she might have actually said no, dude, which is one of the pet peeves I had about just the slang they use in it. I'm giving this part of this culture some farming equipment because they don't have time to wait for the Federation to say, you get these supplies, you get these supplies. And I know this because I was here for First Contact, and I have since been demoted to be on your level, this newbie, like, lower deck grunt worker.
Yeah.
So he learns a lesson in that maybe not everything is what it seems, and maybe there is room for different styles in the workplace. And all during this, the commander of the ship, Commander Ransom, played by Jerry O'Connell, has brought back an alien virus onto the ship that turns everybody into rage zombies. And the new crew member, she just transferred on, the new crew member, Tendi, is a nurse, and she is dealing with this zombie outbreak on the ship while all this is happening, along with, you said the date with Ensign Rutherford,
Mhm.
dating someone else in engineering, and he is half cyborg
Yep.
and is coming to terms with the fact that he is newly cybernetic. He has this implant on his head that keeps malfunctioning that is affecting his personality. And the four of them are friends, and at the end of the episode decide that they're going to have many crazy adventures together throughout. But in the what I liked, one of the aspects I liked is that the captain, the commander, and the senior staff seem to not dislike the lower deck crews, but they want to be, in their minds, it seems like they want to be a crew like Picard and company, where they want the glory, they want to be famous, and they want to be the ones excelling, and don't care about anyone else on their ship. At least that's what I got from it. Who knows where it's going to go from here?
Yeah, and how you described it is pretty good without like there's a sort of a twist at the end that's given to us,
Mhm.
which is why I wanted to say spoilers. You find out that the ensign, is it
Mariner.
Mariner is the daughter of the captain of the ship, and her father is an admiral in Starfleet. So I guess we know why she's there. Like, because she doesn't seem to want to be there at all. She like doesn't.
And they don't seem to want her there either.
Yeah. So it's kind of like, she's our Star Trek trust fund kid? Like, like she just
You
is
know
like,
what made me laugh? The joke that I liked, and it only works after you find out that she's a daughter. But they get back onto the ship. They find a cure for the rage stuff, and then the doctor finds the rage cure, and says to the captain, "I must work quick because you don't have much time, Captain." And you see the captain has a vein growing on her neck,
Mhm.
and Mariner in the background goes, "Damn, Captain should have washed them hands." And that made me laugh so hard because it's one of those things where if we're watching Next Generation, you could yell something that stupid to
Yeah.
Beverly, Data, or anyone, we would do that.
Yeah.
And when it happened, I laughed, but I was like, the captain wouldn't have gone for something like that. Imagine
Yeah,
Wesley doing that to Picard, he'd be
Yeah.
off the ship.
Yeah.
So to find out at the end that it's her daughter, it made sense for me, and it made it even funnier that she just has to begrudgingly accept this ensign saying something like that.
The only thing that got a laugh out of me, and it didn't really get a laugh out of me, but when I do like something that's funny, my laugh sometimes will be, "That's funny." Like I'll say that because because you watch so many comedies, or you seen so much that after a while you kind of become desensitized to it. But in the opening credits for the show, the ship is coming up over horizon of a planet to see like 10 Borg cubes fighting a bunch of Romulan warbirds, and just turns and leave. And I was like, that's a funny bit. Like that's
Yeah.
not my fight, man. I'm out.
That's a damning indictment of the show that you only laughed at a bit from the opening credits.
Not necessarily. That means you had one thing that was funny. So that's a start.
And you'll see it every week because it
Yeah.
is part of the opening credits.
I know. So I was like, whoever designed the opening credits, get that person to write an episode. I thought the show was the right formula, but I don't think it was. It definitely wasn't executed the way I would have done a show. So, or the way I want to watch a show.
I feel the problem I have with it, which might have exacerbated the problem for you, I would say the thing I disliked most about it is that it was only a half hour long. I don't think Star Trek lends itself to being only a half hour. There was so much crammed into this episode, and it follows the Star Trek formula where there's they go to a planet, something happens, it gets solved, and then they're on their way to the next thing. But it felt like it was way too fast to me. And I don't think that a standard formula Star Trek, which seems like this is what it's going to be going for, if they follow this pattern where it is meet strange new world, experience the hardship of it, and solve it, is going to be really hard to do in a half hour going forward. So I think that's what I disliked most about it, because of the constraint to it. I also didn't really like the slang, and it falls in line with one, this show probably is not for me. It's weird saying this. I don't think this cartoon is for me, a 40-year-old. So I'm comfortable saying that, but I still liked it, and I'm still going to keep watching it.
There's always that thought with me with Star Trek is like, because there are a lot of people out there like Picard, and so it's like maybe it's this. It's definitely not for me. Like I will tell everybody to the end of the day, like you're wrong for liking it, and so that is my opinion on that. That your opinion is wrong for even liking it. But I think could it still work? But it works for a different crowd. That is a major question. At the same time, because we're a couple of 40-year-old guys, it is a continuation from a show that ended over 20 years ago.
Yeah.
So
20. It'll be 30 years in 2 years.
Yeah. So yeah, it kind of is for people of our age group. And they'll say like, no, it isn't, you piece of shit, and that's fine.
And that's the same reason. It's the same reason why I still subscribe to CBS All Access, and I'm going to now. Clever promotion of theirs. This week started 23 weeks of new Star Trek. So it's going to go directly from these episodes of of Lower Decks into the third season of Discovery, and maybe even further. CBS has said that their plans are to have a new Star Trek on every week. So who knows if Picard is going to film fast enough where at the end of these 23 weeks, Picard season 2 hits. So it's Star Trek's not going away. But it's sort of sad in a way that Star Trek's not going away, but Star Trek isn't what it was to us anymore.
Well, and I'll say this. I am happy that there's more Star Trek being made, even if it's shitty Star Trek, because somebody might see it and then go back and rewatch the old stuff. There's so many science fiction shows that are great nobody's ever heard of. You know, people, if I was to talk to somebody about The Prisoner, they might think the new reboot.
Yeah.
Not the 1970s Prisoner show, which was great, but there wasn't a couple of Prisoner films. There wasn't this, that, you know, so it's like that show died and went away. So long as there's new ones coming out, Star Trek stuff, there will always be a connection to the past that people can go, oh, you like it? Then you can go back and watch this. Doctor Who's entire existence is on that.
In the slang of it all. There are moments in Next Generation where people will use idioms, if that's the right word, and Data will be confused and be like, I don't know what that means. Or most notably in First Contact, when Zephram Cochrane says, I got to go take a leak, and Geordi goes, leak?
Yeah.
And then he's like, oh, I get it. You're peeing. So the fact that there is this modern slang in Lower Decks kind of takes me out of it as a hardcore nerd, because it's like no one would say the stuff that you're saying, because we've seen this already in Next Generation, that people do not talk like that. And it's one of those things that I dislike about Discovery, in that I have to accept it with Discovery, where the Enterprise of Captain Kirk in the original series did not look like the Enterprise that we see in season 2 of Discovery. It looks cool and it looks neat, but I have to accept that Captain Kirk's Enterprise looked like that because that was when it was made. And if it was made now, I have to just imagine that that is what his ship looked like. So if I watch an episode, or if I think about an episode of Star Trek in conjunction with Discovery or Picard, I have to now accept that's what it looked like now. That is what this new canon says, that is what this stuff looked like. So that's what's weird to me, in that these two shows are now concurrent. So we have a show that looks like Lower Decks that very much has that Next Generation aesthetic, but nothing else is showing that. It would be weird. I don't think that it would be the same thing if it was live action, which is weird to me, because then you don't have this unified idea of what Star Trek is, at least from a visual perspective. So as much as I like the fact that it looks like Next Generation, it stands out because we're now being told that that's not what Next Generation looked like. I told you this was going to get hardcore nerd, and I apologize.
That's all right, man. I have like a list of like negative. I took notes because there was like, I would be like, there was like the deflector shields don't work. It's like hidden things. I was like, that's not how a starship works. So I guess they're deflector.
Let's get into that stuff, and I'll agree. So that we don't do two lists.
Okay.
We'll do the agree disagree. So like if you say we don't like it, I'll say no, I did like it for this reason. So it's not
Okay.
you saying what you liked and disliked. We can just discuss it.
Okay. Um, well, the ships don't work how we've been told the ships work. Like,
Tell me why.
well, like, we learn in Next Generation that um, the ship cleans itself. That's why we never see somebody pushing a broom. That's why, somebody like Barclay is in engineering and not cleaning a toilet, because the toilets clean themselves, the holodecks clean themselves.
I'm
And
sorry to say this. I just found out that the guy that plays Barkley is a hardcore conservative, like Trump supporter, and
oh,
it
that's
broke my
heartbreaking.
heart.
That's heartbreaking. Oh,
Yeah,
because he's
sorry to
he's
bring everybody
such a
down.
wonderful character.
Yeah.
Lieutenant Broccoli.
Yep.
Yeah. So the ship cleans itself. There's a great interview, I think, on Next Generation, on one of the DVDs, of a writer that was on the show, and Gene Roddenberry scolding him because he is like, you don't know how the ship works. And he was like, what's a deflector? And he's like, those are the shields that come up. And he's like, no, the shields are the shields that stop like it getting shot. The deflector is this beam that gets shot out that moves everything out of its way. So the ship, when it's going, faster than light, it doesn't hit a little pebble that goes through the whole ship and kill everybody. So could a deflector dish be broken and not work? Absolutely. Could this ship have been built without the cleaning AI that all the other Star Trek ships are? Sure. But what we're doing is going down making excuses for their bad writing. Like, to me, that's what it is at the end. Like, I have to justify you not knowing the brand you're trying to sell. So
I think that's one of those things that is different for every series. There were episodes that I just saw of Deep Space Nine and then I know you can say, well, that was a Cardassian space station, but they were complaining about how dirty the rooms were, and it's like, I think that just happens. I mean, yeah, there are aspects of the Enterprise that I think were self-cleaning and fixed, but at the same time, look at Voyager and how Voyager's computers were alive, and how many other times did they ever reference that in any Star Trek, even after like the second season of Voyager.
Yeah. And there's a lot of, like, I get mad every time somebody in Star Trek swears, because our fun little Star Trek 4 family film really drove that home. Spock is not an idiot. Spock is very intelligent and is confused when he goes back to 1984 Earth, because everybody is saying double dumbass on you, and which leads to a hilarious running gag of Kirk telling him, well, this century everybody swore. You'll find it in all the writing of the time, and no one will take you seriously unless you swear. And Spock just goes, like, that's it. He gives, if you go back and rewatch it, he gives a little and then every scene he's in, he adds a swear somewhere while he's talking, which is like,
my favorite being when he goes, it's towards the end, like, hey, when are you going to be ready to go? And he goes, 1 damn minute, Admiral.
That's the button. That's like the end of the jokes of it's like, she's like, how did you know that whale was pregnant? She didn't tell you. The hell she did. Like, Spock says, but the button is 1 damn minute. It's just like, people are listening to me finally. Which, can Star Trek be funny? Yes, Star Trek can be funny. It can be very, and that was family entertainment. Like, that was not like, they turned swearing into family entertainment. So you can push the envelope. I think there's room to definitely push the envelope, but
yeah, I will have to agree with you on that. They bleeped a couple of things for effect, like the doctor says something about this shit is something, and it's like, all right, I guess that works. But then that breaks, I hate saying this, that breaks the universe, because in Picard they did it too, where they're like, fuck you to Picard, and it's
piece
like,
of shit, now time for me to shoot up. Like, Picard's really bad. But we've had these problems before, and I want to say that there's a lot of people that are going to be like, you old Star Trek geeks, you just hate the young stuff. Man, I was watching 2 times. Next Generation, my favorite Star Trek. There were 2 times I was in the theater watching the movie, and I nearly threw my popcorn at the goddamn screen. One was a funny thing where Data has his emotion chip put in, which they thought was hilarious. And then we all saw, and we were like, can you make him not emotional? Like, you never wanted somebody to lose rights more than Data being emotional. But he's got the ship's going to crash, and he says, oh, shit. And that's funny, even though my geek brain was like, hey, why is he swearing? So why did he do that? And then Nemesis was the time I nearly threw my popcorn at the screen when it was like, they find B4. In the trailer, they showed that. And I was like, oh, lore. We're getting our lore movie. This is awesome. And they like have B4. And Patrick Stewart goes, Data, was there ever any other androids like you? And that's just like a popcorn falling out of my mouth. Data's like, not that I'm aware of. And then he even turns to the camera and goes, Dr. Nguyen Soon and his naming knows no end. And I was like, you're going to mention somebody that was in 2 episodes, not somebody that was like, tried to destroy the ship, tried to enlist the Borg to destroy, I don't know, the universe. It was all these major plot points, and you guys are just going to stand there and act like he never existed.
It's funny you say that about the one thing I dislike above maybe all in Nemesis is that Data's off-kilter, less sophisticated brother is named B4. And it's like, okay, so he was before Data.
Yeah.
In the script, he was B9. So it was like that fit more into like the naming scheme where it was like it was just this ineffective, benign character.
Okay.
And the fact that they changed it to B4, I was like, okay, someone had to have been like, the audience isn't going to understand what benign means. So let's just say it was before. And that bothered me so much.
I never knew that. I never even knew that story. I didn't mind the name B4. I didn't mind. It was very, plot devicey to have him there. So then when Nemesis is just Star Trek 2 again. It's like Data will sacrifice himself and save everybody. And B4 is the torpedo. He's a talking torpedo, that I'll be resurrected. Don't worry. So that's just,
it's so weird how optimistic they were that there were going to be more movies and that Data would be less sophisticated. Do you remember that episode of Next Generation where there were 2 Rikers because there was a transporter accident?
From what I understand, there's still a second Riker. Like, he's still out there, right? Yeah.
He was on an episode of Deep Space Nine and then went to a space prison because he stole the Defiant. But yeah, he's an interesting character in and of himself. But they wanted to kill William Riker in that episode and have Thomas, this other guy, take over as the helmsman and have Data be the first officer now.
Oh, wow.
And Paramount said, no, you're about to go into a movie series and that's not what we're going to do. You're not going to have like this radical change in this franchise because you feel like you want to. Like, how dare you think of doing that? And that's something that I think now, again, talking critically about these new Star Trek shows, I think they would do that in a heartbeat because they'd be like, the audience would never expect that.
Yeah.
And I don't know how much you've watched of Discovery, but there's something that happens halfway through Discovery where I'm like, what are you doing? Like, I guess that works, but obviously someone the day of in the writer's room just thought, why don't we do this? And they were like, why don't we do that? It's because it doesn't work.
Was that the mirror universe plot point?
Yeah.
And again, like, if somebody pitched that in the writer's room, I'd be like, huh. Like, that it is something that kind of sticks with you. But then you got to justify it. You got to make it work. You got to plan it out. And none of these episodes look like no one's driving. So.
The resolution of the Mirror Universe arc, the way that they resolve that is so much a Poochie went back to his home planet that it makes me laugh so hard. And to spoil it, since we're in the spoiler zone, if you ever watch it, I apologize. It gets to the point where this character who's been established to have been from the Mirror Universe has been interacting with people in Starfleet that don't know that she is now the person from the Mirror Universe, and is talking to somebody and is saying their goodbyes, and then says, oh, and by the way, I'm Taryn from the Mirror Universe, and you've been interacting with me this whole time. The other character goes, what Mirror Universe? And then winks. and then that person smiles, and it works. It's so stupid, but it worked for me, and I was like, okay, if you're gonna button it up like that, good job, because you resolved the fact that this is 10 years before we ever knew the mirror universe.
Yeah.
But now you've sealed it up. Good job. I'm glad you guys made that irrelevant. So at least they have something going for them. I just liked the button at the end of this one where it was very fan servicey, and Mariner starts saying, "You're my Chadish," where it was like, that's funny, but it's like she then goes, "Do you know who Worf is? Do you know who Sulu is? He had a sword. Do you know?" And she's like saying all this stuff that I think older fans would be like, ha ha ha, yeah, she's saying all this stuff. But that again was universe breaking for me. One, it was pandering, and I was like, all right, whatever. But in Relics, Scotty shows up on the Enterprise because there was this transporter accident that he crafted so that he could like survive. None of them know who Scotty is. They're like, oh, I guess he worked on the Enterprise 5 generations ago.
Yeah.
And so then if the smartest crew on the in Starfleet didn't know the exploits of Scotty, who saved the world with Kirk a number of times, who literally saved the Earth by going back in time to get whales and then came back, and then
even in Relics, he's a genius. Scotty's a super genius. It's like, well, everybody died. Somebody that was in the transporter room did some weird bootleg loop, so he's teleported but not reassembled. And I was like, Scotty found a way to be immortal. Like, even in that, and that episode's hilarious because Geordi's like, why don't you go to 10 forward and wait for me? Like, get away from me, you old timer.
And that's what bugged me about it, is that for the joke of this end of this episode was, do you know all these references? No, if no one knew who Scotty was, no one 2 years later is going to give a shit who Deanna Troi is.
Yeah.
As funny as it is to mention that in her jumpsuit, it's like, okay, this is a joke too far for me.
Yeah.
So I think that's what it was. Some of the humor, especially that, felt forced because that was universe breaking to me.
All right. The my next thing, and this is a big thing, is Ensign Mariner. Why I can't Mariner? Okay, I can't say the name at all.
Namor.
Yeah, it's Namor. She comes flying in from the water. She just the character as a whole, just it kind of drove me nuts. Like it was she's swearing, she's drunk, she's playing around with weapons. She doesn't do anything in the episode till towards the end, where she's kind of like, we gotta help save this spider and not hurt him, even though the other character came up with like other things they could do. She even does some stuff that's kind of like kind of inappropriate. Like the new person that comes to the crew is like, I'm so excited to be here, this is amazing, I'm on a starship, oh my god, and it's like they go to the holodeck, which that kind of had a funny joke when it was like, you can go anywhere in the world in the holodeck, and the dumb guy, the guy who's just really passionate about being in Star Trek, is like, let's go to engineering. So they just go to engineering, a holodeck version of the engineering. That was all right. But then like she leaves, and is like, bring up my exercise exercise program. And it was like, you don't know this other character. You don't know what the sexuality of this other character is, what this character's okay with and not okay with. You don't know anything, and you're gonna do that. And it's like, yeah, you're just kind of a piece of shit. So like, until you do something that's worth me cheering or rooting or being something for, you're just kind of a garbage character. And they kept trying to keep her as the high status character, and I was like, I've never watched, not in recent times have I watched something where I'm the high status character, I will do nothing and help no way, and I have no reason for being the high status character. So that was weird for me. So
I think I was starting to dislike that towards the end of the episode, but I think the reveal of her being the daughter of an admiral and the daughter of this captain shows why she is allowed to get away with that stuff. Okay. And I think that if it continues that way and there are no repercussions, I think it'll be a problem, because not to do a Rick and Morty, but it's like at the end you could almost imagine her being like, it's my series arc. I'm gonna learn some humility. Like,
Yeah.
maybe that's what's happening, but I think that the resolution of this is the daughter of this admiral and this captain, that we're going to see more of why she gets away with that stuff, because it seems like the only person that she really abuses in this way is Boimler. So let's see if that grows. I'm willing to give that a little bit more leeway now that I know, but towards the middle of the episode, it was like, how are you getting away with anything like this behavior? So I agree with you to an extent on that.
My next beef was kind of like on the animation style as a whole, where it was kind of it is very Rick and Morty or Solar Opposites, and I think a lot of us were willing to be all right with Solar Opposites looking a lot like Rick and Morty because it was Justin Roiland. And if you're into Rick and Morty, there's some fun videos on YouTube of the long journey of Justin Roiland trying to figure out how the universe of Rick and Morty should be drawn, because it was such a its basis. If you ever watch the original shorts he did for Channel 101, are really obscene. So he drew very obscene, nasty characters first, and then like that was going to be the characters. Then he didn't like it, and him and Dan Harmon worked on it. So then he was like, maybe it'd be funnier if they were very clean characters, very clean, very like cut, very sharp, nice animation, doing these horrible things. And then, of course, what he found was in the middle. He was like, I'm going to make crazy squiggly eyes in each one of the characters. I'm going to do that. And he like kind of made these decisions to kind of give it his own look. And I do think that's a smart way to go. You know, when we look back at animators throughout history, those who came up with their own style and followed through on it, you can spot it. You know, if a Chuck Jones cartoon comes on, I can show you why it's a Chuck Jones cartoon. If there's something along those lines where you have just those sort of, I guess later in the 80s, it'd be like Don Bluth. No, you can like every Don Bluth looks like a mouse, which is like one of those things, but you can spot it. This just looks like somebody else's style, and it's somebody else's style that just did one a big hit show and one a medium hit show. So there's nothing, I can't look at this animation and be like, oh, that's why I'm going to watch it. And it's like, no, it's not. It's very bland. So.
Yeah, it's weird because it suffers only in comparison to Rick and Morty to me, where it is this is what it would look like if Rick and Morty rather did an episode set on the Enterprise of the Next Generation. It would look exactly like this, and you wouldn't be able to figure how to interchange them. The opening credits have that monster sucking on the warp nacelle, and it looked like something out of Rick and Morty.
Yep.
And so I think that's what sucks now about modern animation, is that everything almost looks like a certain way. You find a style and it's going to look like that. I have never watched Bob's Burgers, but I don't like that animation either. So it's one of those things where it's like, if it looked more like Bob's Burgers, I'd probably be even more turned off, and don't know if there is any kind of middle ground on this, because maybe after the show, I'll send you, if I could find it, the old designs for when they wanted to do a Star Trek cartoon before the J.J. Abrams movie. But they had a bunch of designs where it was like going to be like 200 years after Next Generation. But in my mind's eye, I remember that artwork looking a lot like this. So I think that's just a problem with how TV animation looks nowadays.
But I still think,
imagine if they looked like the Inside Out characters.
Yeah, but you know, Matt Groening has a style. You know, we've got was it Disenchanted, which is not a great show. Yeah. It's got some good moments. But yeah, the Disenchanted characters, the Futurama characters, and the Simpsons characters could all exist in the same room. And I can, not to tease Matt Groening, but you can tell Matt Groening's animation style because no one can ever look straight forward. Everybody's got to look at the side, you know. But that's how that guy draws, and that's the style and that he's trying to create, and he gets his team to create. So I don't know. It's just,
so I'm hoping, I agree with there. I wish it was a more distinct animated look. And I'm interested to see what this Nickelodeon Star Trek cartoon is going to look like. There's a kids focused Star Trek show coming out in a year or so. called Prodigy that's based on like kids younger than Starfleet Academy. So are they going to go with this same style, or is it going to be completely different as well? That's going to be a weird thing for the franchise.
Star Trek
As if
Babies.
I'm a stakeholder and I care.
Yeah. I want Star Trek Babies to have the Muppet Babies theme song, just Star Trek shoehorned into it. So Star Trek Babies making our dreams
It's just
come
that
true.
episode
Yep.
of Next Generation where they all got younger.
Yeah.
And their clothes changed proportionally as well.
Yeah. So you see the Admiral, just the legs like Nanny. So it's just like the Admiral legs that come in and leave. So, then my last criticism about the show is the kind of like the reason why I don't like it is as a sitcom, it wasn't funny enough. Like it wasn't, and this is where I'll give it some leeway. Pilots are hard to do. Everybody who's ever made a pilot says that every time. Like pilots are hard to do. Tina Fey's got a great rant in Bossy Pants about how 30 Rock was a nightmare, which is funny because I watched that pilot and I thought it was great. And I honestly think Kimmy Schmidt, Unbreakable Kimmy Schmidt, is a perfect pilot.
I'm glad you clarified Unbreakable Kimmy Schmidt and not one of the other many Kimmy Schmidt TV shows out there.
Yeah. So not the Fold and Sell Kimmy Schmidt, not the Some Assembly acquired Kimmy Schmidt. I love all those offshoots of it, but it's the Unbreakable one. And
The unbearable lightness of Kimmy Schmidt.
so the talented Kimmy Schmidt. That pilot's like perfect, where we're introduced to all the characters, we're introduced to the world. It's very funny, and it almost doesn't take a breath. You know, it's like boom, 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 so that we get our exposition out of the way. So this pilot was, as a sitcom, was not funny enough to be like a sitcom pilot that I'd be like, yeah. And as a Star Trek pilot, that wasn't Star Trek enough for me to be like, yeah. So now it doesn't achieve either of its goals that I thought it should achieve. One.
Yeah. I'm worried now. I wonder how that's going to bode for the rest of the series, because with Picard and with Discovery, they've always premiered like the first 2 episodes of the shows. So do they not have enough faith to have shown both episodes of this? Or is this as good as it gets?
Now I'm
worried.
Well, there was a preview for everybody that saw the first 2 episodes, and people loved it. And I watched some interviews with the cast, and everybody says episode 8 is the episode. So we got to make it to episode 8 of this pile of shit show. Anything else negative from you?
No, they were all in conjunction with what you were saying. It was just some silly stuff in there.
I like the concept of it's these there's a great Star Trek Next Generation episode called Lower Decks that is about the people at the bottom on a starship. And it's a great episode. I think it's season 7.
Yeah.
And it's hilarious. Like for me, some of the world building in that is so funny. Because you've got 2 ensigns talking about like, man, I hope I get a promotion. I'm working really hard. I don't think Riker likes me. And he's like, I'd love to have my own room. And then the Vulcan ensign is like, you don't like sharing a room with me? And then cut to every scene of Riker and Picard walking into a mansion, like on their rooms. Like Riker's got a room for his saxophone.
Well, I will say I liked that in terms of Boimler says, this is where we live, in the hallway. And it's just these bunks. And it reminded me of Star Trek 6, where they get on the alert on the PA and they're like, hey, we're going into battle. We need the coroner because 2 guys just showed up dead. Mm-hmm. And they show all these people waking up and they're on bunk beds. It's like 6 people in one crew.
Yeah.
And it's like, yeah, that would suck. You just saw Captain Kirk's palatial, like,
comically big,
and these kids are on bunk beds.
Yeah. The concept of these are going to be like our 4 characters. We're going to follow them. Here's what they're about. And I could be about all of that. They just need to be written well.
I also liked that to go on that, where we don't have a character that doesn't want to be there. They all like their jobs to different levels of enthusiasm about it, but they all want to be there. And I think that's an interesting way of working within that Gene Roddenberry frame of reference, where it's not anybody who's there against their will. It's not an Ensign Rowe type situation. They all want to be there. Some of them might feel differently about their jobs, but they're all happy and they're all good at their jobs. I like that.
Well, Ensign Mariner, Namor, not so much. She's the only one. But I, when we find out that, you know, she's the Star Trek Trust Fund kid that's being forced to be on there or has no place to go or something like that, then I kind of want to explore that. Yeah. So those would be the things that I did like. Like, I like the dynamic of the characters, and I like what this show is setting up to be. So,
and I will say I like the positivity in that as well with the characters, that the Rutherford character is now, they say it a couple times, I'm now part cyborg, but he's not upset about that. He's like, this is just what happens. To them, it's like, oh, you know what? I'm wearing a cast now. Like, or I got laser eye surgery. It's like, this just happened. And it's not a brooding character who's like, no, I'm part cyborg. He's like, it's cool. So I like the positivity that they're, and hopefully it's intentional, but the positivity of all of these characters still looking on the bright side of things.
Yeah. And the other thing, this is a personal thing, is I hate prequel. I hate pretty much all prequels. I loved them as a kid. I was like, oh, what happened before? And then you know how every prequel ends? It leads up to what you already know. So just, especially in the last like 12 years, anytime somebody's like, it's a prequel to this, I just roll my fucking eyes, man. I roll my eyes hard, and I don't care. I just don't care. I didn't care about Enterprise. I didn't care about Rogue One. I knew what happened in Rogue One. Why? Because they mentioned it in the briefing room. I'm good. Like, I don't, not everything needs a backstory. But those are the things I like.
So, was it? I thought there was more of a list.
No. That's it. That's
great.
Those are the things I liked. I did like those things. Which
I liked the little touches. I thought the voice acting was good. I don't really like. I think Rick and Morty has done a good job of this, where Rick and Morty aren't played by like celebrities. It's Justin Roiland. It's not people that are famous. They're not getting them for their voice. They do a pretty good job. So I like the animation enough that the voice acting completes it for me, even though I wish it was different. And I just like the overall aesthetic and what they did with the show. It's very clearly Next Generation era. I like the aliens that they show. They had the Bajoran, the Trill was on a date with the cyborg guy. There's a blind character who has Geordi's visor, which always bugged me, that it's like, if this is a cure for blindness, why doesn't everybody have it? Or why aren't there more blind characters?
Yeah.
So I liked that. I liked what's going. I thought the music was good. I didn't like the opening credit theme song, and that's something that's going to be a problem with me, where it's like I am such a fan of movie scores, and specifically Star Trek movie scores. This one felt kind of bland, and I wasn't too big of a fan of it. But I mean, if that's the most I can say, is that I didn't like the score for the opening credits, I think you're in a good place.
Yeah.
So I'm looking forward to the next few episodes, and looking forward to the next 23 weeks of Trek with you talking crap about these shows, because it gives me something to do in this pandemic, in this empty movie theater.
I think we talked about this, but we're going to have an absolutely like sort of pointless rating style. So the pilot, Second Contact of Star Trek Lower Decks, Mike Armendariz, what would you rate this? How many Darmoks out of Jalads would you give this?
I give this 3 Darmoks out of 5 Jalads. And we also spoke about how we were going to reference it. I will say I give this 3 Darmoks out of 5 Jalads. This is Data when he dated that girl from engineering.
It's the girl who had like the distant boyfriend, right? Like, and she was trying to find a replacement after they broke up. So
it's a decent episode. I can't wait to see where it goes. So 3 out of 5. Data when he dated the blonde engineer.
All right, I'll give it. I'm gonna give it one Darmok out of 5
Ooh.
Jalars. I know it's rough. I'm be the rough one. Sorry, but I'm giving it one with hopes moving ahead, moving forward. Like at the end of the first episode of Picard, I didn't know how they could fix it, other than the first episode was a dream. And with this one, I could at least say like, oh, there's a way forward with this. So, and to keep the Darmok thing going, I will say this episode is Shaka on the water takes a writing class. So that'll be my Star Trek thought. Yeah.
Right. Well, I'm looking forward to the rest of them. Hopefully, I mentioned it to you. Hopefully, whoever listens wants to email you or put comments below where you're going to have this.
Yeah.
We hope to have this up on iTunes or wherever you get your podcasts as well. So, one way or another, if you listen to this, make sure you send us an email. I'll set up an email address for the next time we talk. But it's good seeing you. It was very fun doing this. And,
yep.
I look forward to talking to you more about this nonsense in the future, and
right.
Maybe we can do a Star Wars spinoff as well.
Yeah, apparently. We both have a lot of freaking unresolved issues with Star Wars. Apparently, we were not here to talk about that at all, and it was like, hey, this motherfucker. So
hey, let's do this 20-minute interlude on episodes 8 and 9. Jesus Christ, you could hear people clicking off.
So you morons. Yeah.
All right. Thank you very much for joining us. We will see you all next week.
All right.
Bye.
See you next time.
Bye, baby. Are we gonna argue? Do you not like Last Jedi also?
Oh, I think Last Jedi should have been. It's not my favorite Star Wars. It's Last Jedi should have been Episode 10. It was too. It's. I like it and I hate it. I'm one of the weird geeks that like, wow, these are fascinating ideas. We're watching you piss on the last movie, which is not really cool to those who liked the last movie.
See, but that's so difficult for me to reconcile because the screenplay for Last Jedi. If you're joining us now, you're watching an episode of Star Trek.
Lower Decks. Now we're going to talk about Star Wars Episode 8 because that's
just a quick thing on Star Wars Episode 8. It was done being written before Rise of Sky or before Force Awakens came out. Like he went beat by beat with J.J. Abrams about what he was doing the entire time. So when everyone says that he was destroying the legacy of that the first movie was setting up, like he worked in conjunction with J.J. on that. And J.J.'s thing was like, I'm doing this movie and I'm out. See you later.
Yeah.
Like I think bringing J.J. back as a marketing standpoint was one thing, but I dream for a day or a world that they had said, hey, Rian Johnson, why don't you just make 9? Since you did the middle chapter, let's see you bring your ideas to a conclusion. And I think it would have been, a lot of people still would have hated it, but I think I would have liked that a lot more than what we got. We can do an entire series about Episode 9 and how weird that was for me. Now back to Star Trek.
Yeah, real quick, I'll just say Episode 8 and 9. Watching both in the theater, paying like $14 so I can get a nice seat and be at a nice showing in a nice theater to watch both movies. I paid top dollar to see your films to watch 2 directors have a pissing contest. Like that's what it felt like. Yeah. And so 8 pissed on everything 7 set up, and then 9 pissed like pissed to a point that you like it's like shooting piss towards the end, like on 8. Literally, Rose is like, how can I help? Go stand over there. Yeah. Luke, she throws the lightsaber. Don't throw this. You would be a real dickhead if you did that. Like, it's like, oh my God. Like, you guys, I know Disney hates bad PR, but you guys fucking hate each other. And you obviously hate each other's movies. And that's all I see. So
to such a strange extent where there was a making of episode 7 book that was written by the guy that has written every making of Star Wars book since like the early 2000s. And when he turned in his draft, they said, we're not releasing that. Like
Yep.
it makes it look like it's basically a kitchen sink approach. You're putting everything in and all the arguments behind the scenes and everything. And he was like, that's what I did for the other movies. And they're like,
Yep.
well, we're not doing that anymore. And it's
Yeah.
like that right there encapsulates what the issue is now.